Hi, I'm Raga Olga D'silva, or Totally Out Now, as you know me. We have a very, very interesting guest today. Let me tell you a little bit more about him. Dr. Bhaskar Bora was a successful doctor, entrepreneur, a family man. So, what happened when life threw him some extremely tough curveball? When spinal cord surgery went wrong and left him with permanent disabilities, Dr. Bora had to use every resource within himself to not only stay afloat, but also create new pathways and a new way of living. Did life give him a second chance? Or did he create the second chance himself? Find out. Join me and Dr. Bora. Dr. Bora, I'm going to call you Bhaskar, and please join us as we discuss life and death in his book, The Second Chance in Life. How are you?
Hello, I'm very well. Thank you.
And I'm going to
Good
call
good
you,
morning to you and good morning to everyone who's watching the show.
I'm really looking forward to a conversation, Bhaskar, and with your permission, I'm going to call you Bhaskar.
Yes, please do. Yeah.
And first of all, congratulations at many levels. One, of course, on your Second Chance in Life book, which I have read and have absolutely loved. And
Thank
also,
you.
congratulations, a bigger congratulations, and keeping yourself together through all the adversities, which I think is the biggest lesson for me when I read your book. Because what happened to you, what you went through, would put people pieces apart of them, and it would be very difficult to bring it all back together. But you have done this absolutely beautifully. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
So I just,
Thank you.
just if you can take us back to what really happened, and when I said that the surgery went wrong, right? So can you
hmm
just give us a little context on what really happened?
yeah, so basically it was back in July 2017. So previously I'd been suffering from a bit of neck pain and some shoulder pain radiating to my left arm, little finger, which was kind of niggling me a bit. And it wasn't getting better with physiotherapy or with acupunctures and stuff like that. So a friend of mine is a pain consultant. He gave me some injections to the neck that didn't get better as well. So he did refer me to a neurosurgeon, and I saw the neurosurgeon, and I was kind of explained that I've got a trapped nerve, and it's a relatively simple procedure to have the trapped nerve being decompressed by a procedure called foraminotomy. And I was expected to be in the hospital for a night or at the 2 days, and then a couple of weeks rest, and things should be better. And I was really looking forward because, as you perhaps have known from the book, that I was a workaholic and I just needed to be at my best form to carry on with the work. So we went for the surgery. That was on the 17th of July. And but I remember that as I woke up from the anesthetic, and the first thing I realized was lots of pins and needles on my legs and on my right hand, and I just could not move it. And then I spoke to the nurse initially that night, then the next morning to the doctor, and basically I was initially told that it was because of the reaction to the anesthetic, and that also is quite common following this type of surgery. But things kept getting worse, and being a doctor, I also had this feeling that there's something's not right, because I came with different symptoms and now I've got completely different symptoms. But I was put on steroids, and then it kind of carried on for about 4 days before I had another scan. And when I had the scan, initially I was told by the nurse that things were fine. But then the surgeon then told me that, oh, the scan has showed something that he didn't expect. And I had to go for further surgery. This time it would be much more extensive. And that the surgery could not be done in the hospital where I was in. So I had to be uh, transferred to another hospital on an urgent basis, to Queen's Hospital in Romford, where the next morning I had much more major surgery. But because of the gap between the first surgery and the second surgery, uh, whatever damage I had to the spinal cord, and the fact that it was compressed for about 4 days, so that left me with the permanent disability. So that's how it all happened, and what was meant to be a couple of days, just one night stay, It ended up being several weeks in and out of hospital, in fact, around 7 months, for which I was also admitted at Wellington Hospital. By that time, I found another very good doctor, Dr. Silva, who has been like a godsend to me. And then I also had to go to Kerala in India for Ayurvedic treatment and all. So it's been an ongoing thing. So, yeah, so I went in
Gosh.
with one issue and came out with several others.
Gosh, Bhaskar, I mean, just reading about this, what you just described in your book, and then just listening to you, it just gives me like real pins and needles myself. And I think, oh my God, how can one person go through so much? But then, as a doctor yourself, what was your first reaction? Did you feel betrayed, for instance, by the medical profession in that case, in your case?
I think I went through several emotions at the same time, from the grief, frustration, the anxiety. Uh, I don't know if betrayal would be a word for this one, but I certainly kind of knew, being a doctor, that what was happening, and therefore it was in a way it was more difficult, because I kind of knew that this is something which is not going to go away suddenly. As much as I was told, I was trying my best not to be a doctor, because usually doctors and nurses make bad patients, and I was not trying to kind of press myself too hard, but I had that feeling that things wouldn't go, just wouldn't go. And on the other hand, being a doctor also kind of helped me accept the situation. It kind of I was able to accept it quite early on, that this is going to be the new normal, and I have to adjust. So, and
Interesting,
I have to make the
interesting,
best out of it.
Bhaskar. Sorry, I'm interrupting. You used the word acceptance, which is a very word which is very dear to me, because I think
Absolutely, yeah,
the most important lesson that I have learned in life is like it starts with us. And what starts with us is this fact that we run away, we are in denial, we feel so many emotions. You just described some of the emotions you felt. And one of the biggest issues that we have in life is that we don't accept things.
yeah,
And change only happens when there's acceptance. And that particular, chapter in your book on acceptance was really touching. And I said, this is it. To me, that is the turning page. That's when you actually turning point in your life, right? Because
yes.
I saw you seesawing through the book. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
whether you felt that. I saw you going between fear, anger, guilt. A lot of guilt
Absolutely.
came through. A lot of guilt for leaving what you feel like. What I feel is something what wasn't in your control. Your wife,
Mm-hmm.
Millie, and we'll talk about that. Your parents that you had been, through a similar incident with your father. So tell me, when you were going through this journey in the hospital, you'd already had experience about your father who had, who was bedridden for many years. So do you draw parallels, and did you feel that that could be your life as well?
Yes, I did, and it was strange, really, because I was never scared of death. In fact, there had been I had been writing poems and stuff since my child, and in between it all got left behind because of work. But that was a subject which always fascinated me. But what I was really scared of was being half dead, and especially seeing the impact of it on the family. Seeing my father living through a stroke and being wheelchair bound and all that. So what I didn't want in life was to be a vegetable, or being paralyzed, or being dependent on somebody. And whether it's the law of attraction, or whether it's something else, that is exactly what happened to me. So it's like the history repeating itself. And that was my anxiety, my biggest worry when this happened, and when I realized that this is something which I'll have to live with now, was not about how I would cope. It was more about how my family would cope, how my wife would cope, because I've seen my mom go through this for 21 years. And it was also the worry about how my children would feel, how my children would have to kind of face the fact that their father is not the same as other fathers. So there were small things which I wouldn't be able to do. I'm still not able to do with them. So that was my real worry. In terms of the acceptance, I was quite good, I thought, in accepting my physical limitations, also my emotional state. What I found more difficult and still struggling is with the sudden collapse of the finances. So the financial problems, they are much more difficult to accept. So but I think what is important, one important thing I've learned is that we need to know that there are certain things in life we can't change, and there are certain things we can. So the sooner we can distinguish that, then we can focus our energies on changing the things that we can change.
Brilliant, brilliant. I mean, I found so many wonderful nuggets throughout your book, like people like me who, a lot of people say that we inspire. And I was inspired by these nuggets that you have, Bhaskar, and that I think and I believe comes through life experiences. So I'm going to take you back to the 7 months that you just talked about. So in
Yeah.
those 7 months, so what were your disabilities? Like you used the word disabilities. So what were those? If you can describe to us, and where are you now?
Okay. So I I just lost the feeling of my legs. And when I say lost the feeling, it was more like pins and needles. The analogy, or the best way to describe it, would be like I'm trying to walk against the current of water, and somebody is pulling me from behind. So I can't really take my leg forward. So in medical terms, there's a condition called sensory ataxia. So because of the pins and needles on my legs, so if I close my eyes, I can't really tell you whether I'm standing on grass or on a wooden floor or a carpet. I can't really feel that. I'm beginning to feel it a bit better now than what I was. So I had very poor power of my legs, so I could not lift it up against. I could lift only a little bit against gravity, but I couldn't lift against any sort of resistance. On top of that, I had on the three fingers. So these three fingers, they don't work properly. So like I can't make a grip. So it kind of remains like this. Uh, so it took me a long time to be able to hold a pen, hold a fork, those sort of things. And I, most as Indians, most of us, we like eating with our hands, especially when you're eating rotis and stuff like that. So I couldn't do that. So that was a big thing for me. So I had to they had to put in lots of plasters and stuff to make to fatten up the handles of the forks or the knives for me to be able to hold. Um, Primarily, I wasn't able to walk because of this. Uh, for it took almost 7 months for me to be able to stand up without support. So finally, I could stand up, but without support, but I couldn't walk just because I couldn't feel. So I had to have two crutches, which I could do for about 30 yards or so. But beyond that, I need a wheelchair most of the time. I couldn't read. I couldn't write. I couldn't eat. I couldn't do any sort of dexterity, any form of dexterity, like picking up a coin from the floor. That sort of thing I can't do. And one of the biggest problem is pain. So it's like my fuse box is gone. So therefore you get all sorts of impulses everywhere. It's like shooting currents, electric currents passing through my body, especially my legs. And because of that, I had to take about 16 painkillers. It used to be more, but I managed to come off all the opiates and stuff because they were not, I mean, they are nasty things. As a doctor, I dealt with many patients with chronic pain, and I realized that unless I come off all these morphine related drugs, they cause more harm than good. So I managed to come off it. Uh, but yeah, it's now a thing that if I take all my painkillers as the doctors prescribe, then I end up being just like a sleepy chicken. But if I don't take them, I am in a lot of pain. So that was the main reason why I had to take medical retirement. The other thing that I get is a lot of chest pain. So
Okay.
initially I was a bit worried whether it's got to do with the heart. So, but there's a lot of chest tightness, and that chest tightness again is because of this current of the impulses that I get. And so those are my main disabilities. Uh, you probably also read that just 2 months after this happened, I was also diagnosed with the cancer of the thyroid. Although I didn't have any symptoms, and fortunately, it was caught quite early on. So I had to have my thyroid removed. So I have to take medicines for that as
Gosh, I mean, it's like a encyclopedia, isn't it? Of
well.
one thing after the other. But I know one of the other things. I mean, I know you're laughing and we are smiling at it. It's not amusing at all, I'm sure. And but I found that in your book that you were kind of, again, I'm going to use the word navigating. You keep it light. Sometimes you go delve deeper into you, but you start bringing out little references to your time at the your medical school, which I loved that story, by the way, about the car. And I'll let the readers buy the book and read that particular incident. But how did you feel when you're going through your own internal adjustments, let's say, but then
Hmm.
suddenly again now you find out that you have cancer, and which I, from what again I read in the book, was basically something that you got it right, and you talked
Yeah.
about it. Something that you, through your dog Shadow, if I
Yes.
remember.
So yeah, it was quite interesting actually. I mean, when I came back home from the first operation, and at that time we were living in a normal house, the duplex with the bedrooms upstairs. So I had to live downstairs, and for a few days I was in the living room till we converted the garage into a bedroom. And so I've got two dogs, a chocolate Labrador and a German Shepherd. So chocolate Labrador. So I mean, you would be amazed how much dogs know and understand if somebody is not well in the house. So they would always be with me. But this guy, he developed this a strange habit. So he would just come to me and he'd leave everything else, but just uh, lick around on my neck. There was something he's never done before, and I just could not get him away. So I was just stop licking. You can do everything else. And he's a big boy. He's about 110 pounds, so he's a big boy. So but he just kept going on and on and on, and then after a few days, after I think about 2 weeks, I finally managed to get the bed at the Wellington Hospital, which is the neuro rehab center. And so when I was there and I was undergoing the physiotherapy and the rehabilitation, and it was one evening, because I was a doctor, so kind of I've developed a rapport with the nurses, with the other doctors and stuff, and then I almost became like a study case for them. So they would come and chat and developed a very good rapport. And many of the nurses would come and say good morning at the beginning of their shift. They would say bye before going home, that sort of thing. So this particular matron, I remember her name was Roxanne. So Roxanne was going on holiday, so she just came to me and says, "Doc, I'm not going to see you again for a week, so I'm going away. By the way, would you like a copy of your reports?" I said, "Yeah, why not? That will help." So she bought me the report, and then as I was just going through the report, expecting to see just the spinal cord injury and all that, so I realized on the report it was saying that has got a malignant tumor, a tumor most likely to be malignant, has been seen on the thyroid gland. Urgent FNAC or biopsy requested. Sorry, suggested. So I said, "Oh, damn! Now I've got cancer now as well." So somehow it didn't scare me, but it was like, "Oh God, now it's another one thing to deal with." And my first thought was, I'm gonna tell my wife and my family, because cancer has got this negative
Yeah.
connotation, right? So, but again, as a doctor, and I kind of knew that yeah, not all cancers are the same. So, and looking at that, I thought it is still within the remits of where it can be surgically removed. So, so I called the resident doctor. I said, guys, have you seen this? Uh, I said, "Oh no, we were just looking through. We haven't seen the report. We're just looking at the images." Then I called up my consultant. It was around 9:30 at night. He said, "Dr. Silva, do you know that actually I've got cancer?" So he's like, "What?" I said, yeah, it was on the report, and I think you haven't seen it. And so I think he had a go at the resident doctor. But anyway, so next day itself, it was because it was all private. So next day itself, I had the biopsy, and I met a very nice Indian lady actually who did my biopsy. And even before she put the needle in, she said with the ultrasound, she said it is cancer. It is cancer, and I think we will need to have it operated as soon as. So then I was referred to a ENT surgeon. He was a very nice gentleman. So I had my surgery at St. Thomas's.
Okay.
So I basically had my neck cut through three times within 2 months.
God.
So yeah, but strangely, once I returned home on a break between this neuro rehab, then Shadow, my dog, he wouldn't do that licking again.
How interesting. I really, understand this really well, even at a personal level. And I understand how the dogs can see more than we can, humans can.
Yeah,
We have a cat. I have a cat from Bombay. So as you know, my partner had a stroke 1.5 years ago,
yeah,
and this cat was never physical, never touched, didn't like touch. He's one of those, cats. And when my partner went into hospital, from that day onwards, he never left me. He would come and sit on my lap, and he would just sit. He would just observe. So I truly believe that animals understand, or more than we really understand
they
them.
do absolutely.
If,
Yeah,
but I'm, what also struck me when I was listening to your story now is like how fortunate you were as your doctor, right? So you could self-diagnose in a way, you could read your own reports. People like us who have no idea, I wonder what happens to people like us, and whether,
it
uh,
is. Yeah, it is a bit worrying. I mean,
yeah,
I mean, people. If it happens in India, it should not happen anywhere. But when it happens in India, people would think that yeah, you need to go abroad to go for treatment. And here I was in London having a private treatment and all that. And for this to happen here, it is a bit worrying. But I only hope that it doesn't happen in majority of cases. It is an exception rather than the rule. But
yeah,
on a daily basis, you hear of so many people being misdiagnosed or not getting the treatment they should, and it is a worry that now that the waiting list is so long on the NHS and stuff. So I think people are under a lot of pressure. It's not an individual problem. I don't think any doctor would want to be in the shoes of my surgeon or any of the doctors who have treated me, because I'm sure they had the best intention in their heart, but things went wrong. And what I felt bad was the fact that my original surgeon, he just left me alone. He either he was scared or he felt guilty or whatever. He just left me alone, and that's what bothered me more. I mean, something can go wrong in surgery. That's a possibility. But rather than being in sort of denial or rather than leaving me alone for me to try and find somebody else for treatment, so that was quite difficult. And just as you said, I mean, it was fortunate that I had that good rapport with the matron who bought me the report, because no, that's not normal practice. And for me to be able to
yeah.
understand the report and then call my consultant. And again, the consultant who was looking after me, he's been treating me as a colleague. So I had that sort of rapport to call him up at 9:30 in the evening. Um, but I think for a person who doesn't have medical knowledge or doesn't have anyone in the family who would be looking at these sort of things, it could have been highly probable that that report just got lost or just got filed, and it would be years possibly before I had symptoms, and then by that time the cancer would have spread
Yeah.
a lot more than what it did.
No,
So
sure, absolutely, and that's why when I read your book and I listened to you, I feel that we are speaking from this positive angle right now,
mhm.
because things did turn out right for you,
Yeah,
and and God forbid if that hadn't happened, and that's a lot of cases. And I did think about it a lot when after reading your book, and I think like do I trust the medical profession? I do, absolutely, because we've had a fantastic experience with NHS, with
Mm-hmm.
nickel, of course, but we've also had bad experiences. Particularly coming from the Indian background, we kind of hand over ourselves to the doctors, saying that that is their responsibility, they know better. In
Mm-hmm.
India, I don't remember ever questioning the doctor, saying, "Oh, but why is my sugar level so high?" Or "Why? What do you think?
Exactly. Yeah.
Will you be doing these tests on me?" Because we just trust the medical professionals, right? However, I'm glad that the outcome is positive and it's not the other way around. So I think that again, we should congratulate ourselves, right? There are two things again that stood out for me in your book. One is about the whole gut instinct you talk about,
Mm-hmm.
and then the support system, and which came in the form of your wife, of course. And I'm saying we can't take it for granted, because everybody's partners are not as wonderful as your wife has been. So can you just take us through how was her reaction, what kind of support she provided for you, and how did you as a family deal with this adversity?
Sure. It's been, very tough. I think it has been tougher on her than on me, in the sense that she not only had to look after me, but also try and understand what I'm going through. And actually, when you are going through something, it's probably easier to understand it than to kind of get in yourself into somebody else's shoe and understand it. And then there is a big difference between the empathy and the sympathy bit as well, isn't it? So I think it was quite difficult for her initially. She was quite frustrated when I kept telling my doctor, that my surgeon, that it is going wrong. It's not right. Something is not right, and this wasn't happening. So she was quite frustrated. And then when we had the second operation, and looking at me, I think she also kind of had this feeling that things are not going to be normal. Having seen my dad and my mom in that state, I had always tried to make my wife as independent as possible. And I used to keep telling her, and she used to get irritated. I said, if I die tomorrow, you have to be able to look after the family, you have to look after yourself. And that is why I've even got an email, I have got a template email that I keep updating every few months, which has got every single account detail, every property detail, and everything with passwords and everything, so that tomorrow, if I'm not there, she can go through it. And that's the whole reason why I got her to drive, and basically everything that we have is in our both our names, so that she can do it that way. Um, so when this happened, I think it took her a little while to again come to grips with it. The cancer thing, I didn't tell her for about 5 days, but then I didn't want to, because I knew that that would be a much bigger reaction. Uh, but because the insurance was in her name, in order for me to get the treatment, I had to tell her, because he would have to call up the insurance company, Bupa. So I had to tell her, and as expected, I mean, she cried and she was devastated. And but when this operation happened, and I finally went home, and then I had to I was again back in the hospital for, I mean, it was weeks on end that she was just with my two daughters. And being in a foreign land, you don't have the support system as you would be back in India, where you'd have all your relatives and stuff. So it was really tough. But I had some very good friends. So my neighbors, they were really, really helpful. So they would do our shopping and stuff like that. So they even took the girls to school. So I was really, really blessed to have such friends and neighbors, especially in the UK coming up there. And also, one of the primary things was that I wasn't able to drive for almost a year. So it was her duty to take me somewhere. So anywhere I used to have to go, or for a hospital appointment, whatever, it was either an Uber or getting her. I have to thank not just her, but her work as well. So she works for a company called Gallup, and it's an American company, and they have been amazing. So they just let her work from home, do flexible working, so she could just go start or finish whenever she likes. She's been in that company for about 17 years now, And it has been really really helpful. So without that help and without her support, uh, we couldn't deal or come out of it. So even now, she is the one who takes my daughters for the ballet lessons or for their swimming lessons and taekwondo and all that. So it's been quite stressful on her. There was a time when she just wanted to get go back to India because she couldn't cope. But my mother-in-law came and stayed with us for quite some time, so that was a big help. And then we had to take the decision that at least till the girls become more independent or get to university and all that, so we just can't move back to India or go anywhere else. So we kind of coped. I'm a bit more independent now, that I can drive an automatic car, so
Great.
which is brought a lot more independence back. The lockdown, in a way, has actually been a blessing for me. Uh, Sorry to say this, because I mean I know it has devastated many lives, and me being an entrepreneur, it has also affected me a lot financially. But just because the fact that it was lockdown and everybody is working from home and the children were at home, so it helped a lot with my healing, having my family around physically with
Sure,
me.
sure. I understand about the comment you made about lockdown because it was quite similar for us. And I thank God that it happened at the time that it happened. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, whilst there were the other side to it where, I couldn't visit my partner in hospital for weeks and weeks during lockdown. But the good part is that, we were all here together emotionally to look
Yeah.
after each other. Because I think when you go through what you've been through or what I've been on the other side as a carer. So
Mm-hmm.
both Millie and you have to work together to get anyone better in the family, right? It is not,
Absolutely.
it's not a one person's journey, it becomes a family journey. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
I remember as soon as I read the book, I wrote to your wife, I wrote to Millie, and I told her I have huge
Yes, you
amount of,
did. She told me, and she said
yeah.
that I haven't yet replied, and she wants to talk to you. She was telling me yesterday.
No, thank you. That she doesn't need to, but I needed to share how I felt because
Hmm.
as a carer, been on the other side. I know how difficult it is. But I also read your poem last night that you sent to me, which you written, and I haven't responded to that because I was very touched, and that keeps coming back for me through your writing. While it's a writing of somebody who has battled, who has fought, and who has won that battle, it also makes me feel that you live in this whole space of guilt. And I'm not a therapist, so I can't say anything, but I think that
Hmm.
burden is not yours to carry because that's okay. It's like I feel I felt that from the other side. To see your partner go through what they go through, it's very difficult. And
Yeah.
then to feel that your partner is feeling guilt on behalf of you, which you may not even feel, that's a bigger burden to carry. So I would say that in time heal that part of you as well, because when when someone asked me this, someone said, "Oh, your partner can't see, can't do the same things." But things change, right? How do
It
you
does.
feel about it, and how do you cope? And I remember saying that I'm actually grateful to the universe that I got this opportunity because love is action, right? Love is not words. And if
Mm-hmm.
I was presented with an opportunity to actually express it in the only way I can. Although I'm a writer, I don't write love poems for my partner, but the way I
Mm-hmm.
could express it by looking after her and healing with her, and we heal together. So I don't know whether this makes any sense to you, but I think you should just chill
It,
and
it it does. It absolutely does. What you're saying is absolutely right. I mean, I do feel a bit guilty in the sense that I thought that she deserved a better life. In the sense that it's not that we didn't have a good life. We used to have a very good life, from it's from the rags to the riches, and we used to. I mean, whatever I have done, uh, it was just done by the two of us. No inheritance involved. Nothing involved. So to the point that we were having a good life, and then suddenly all this crumbled. So I wish that my daughters were a bit older and bit more independent. But yeah, it was like the sky breaking down on her, and she had to go through all this, especially already being away from your home country. So but I think what has happened, in the sense, just like you said, love is should be beyond the physicalities, right? So, I mean, I've seen so many people who have been left behind just because they fell ill or they were institutionalized because of some irreversible illnesses and stuff like that, and then the partners just move on. So um, I'm not blaming anyone because everybody's situation is different, but I think these sort of situations sometimes actually brings the people, the partners, closer, because then you move beyond just the bodily intimacy and the sex and all sorts of things, so because I mean, unfortunately, since everything has happened from waist down, so we have kind of lost that intimacy as well, and it's not fair on her, but it on the other hand, it has brought us spiritually closer. It has brought spiritually closer, and then I think we share a lot more things that than what we used to before. We have got more time. uh, we fight and argue more as well because there's more time.
Of course.
But generally, as you said, I mean, it's very difficult for partners, but for some partners, it is they take it as a kind of duty or a grace, to be able to do that for their partners.
Yeah, and
Sometimes I do feel guilty, and
yeah,
that poem was an instance, because that particular evening we were coming back from somewhere. Yeah, I think we had gone to the supermarket, and I had to get a wheelchair, and she wasn't very happy with that. And when she came home, and so we're just sitting, we're having tea, and then she said, "Did I not deserve a better life?" But that was not sorry, primarily because of me. That was primarily to talk about things that some my brother hasn't spoken to me for a little while because he was upset about some things on the book.
okay.
So we were talking about different things, and that's when she passed this comment, and then it really affected me. So that's how this poem came
Sure,
out.
sure. No, thank you for sharing. And, it comes through the love for each other, comes through in the book. And I would actually urge the, audience to pick up the book and read it because it's a beautiful love story. The way you have kind of connected the dots and you just, as you talk about life, you just bring Millie in. And I think it's a tribute to her, really, the book.
Thank you.
And, and I hope more partners are like what Millie is and what you are with Millie. And, the other thing that I thought a lot about, and again, you brought it up, is apart from the C word that we run away from, there's a letter called D that we run away from, right? Death. We don't want to talk about death. I often post about death in my own this because that's something that's written. That's the
Hmm.
only universal truth. One day we will all die.
Absolutely, yes.
So why do we not talk about it? And so when you talk about death, it's also when you reflect on death, you also have certain situations that you create for yourself in anticipation, right? Which you
Yes.
did. So we talked
Mhm.
about, that's why I was going to come next to about the financials, right? You said that during lockdown and because of your illness, that kind of got really compromised. But you also in the past have set up your family to some assets you managed to build, some insurance securities you
Yeah,
managed to create. So tell us more about it. So do you advise people who are watching that that's something that we must all do?
I would certainly advise that. In fact, there are now my financial advisor and a couple of other financial advisors now give my example that this is what Dr. Bora did, and look at his situation now. It's because of that he's still not on the street. That sort of thing. I'm a favorite with the financial advisors now. Uh, I would certainly suggest to everyone that you prepare for the rainy days when the sun is still shining, because it's very easy to forget and take things for granted, and you don't know what's going to happen next.
Right.
I think it was primarily the reason that when my dad had his stroke and he was in coma for 29 days, and we didn't even know where the money was, and although we had money and assets, nobody knew how to pay the bill, and I had to beg my family members and stuff like that, and we had terrible experience, and then as a result of which I had to give up 1 year of my career from which I had never recovered. uh, so I always had this thing in me that I have to make sure that I do enough for my family. So it was right from I think 2006 onwards, that's when I started investing. primarily in different insurances. So lots of my friends used to say, "Why are you wasting all this money?" I mean, there was one point where I was paying about £700 just for insurance monthly, and then I also had this understanding that you should not be putting all your eggs in one basket, and life does give you clues that and small miracles kind of happen every day. We just need to be open and receptive to those clues. Most of the time we don't heed those clues, or we don't heed those gut instincts. I always had this thing that if I die tomorrow, we will all have to. I somehow, since childhood, I have got this feeling that my time is limited at 55. So all everything that I had planned was for 55 till the age of 55. Anything beyond that is a bonus. So I invested a lot of money on on insurances, then on stocks and shares, not in all in one go, but in small chunks every month on ISRs. And then we created a real estate portfolio, and there were several people who helped me through because I didn't know about all this. So, but it was like taking money out, equity out from one house and buying another sort of thing. So, because of all that, I think when I was diagnosed with the cancer and I was written off as a permanently disabled, so got the critical illness payout, which was a big help at that time. And then when the occupational health said that because you're on all these medications and because you're on a wheelchair and then your current condition, it's probably best that you take time to recover yourself, and then you can always think about coming back to practice part time. So I had to take the medical retirement, so which again was a struggle. It took about 8 months, but we got that money. So with all of that, we had to buy. We were able to buy a more disabled friendly house. So now I've got a house. We live in a house which has got downstairs bedroom and downstairs bathroom and stuff like that. So what I'm trying to say is that you should always, not just for yourself but for your family, the best thing you can give them is security.
Yeah.
If you're doing life insurance, you won't get anything yourself. I mean, one of my staff members were asking, I mean, why life insurance? Because you are not getting the money. I said, no, I'm not getting the money. Money will come after that, but my family will live. And now I'm probably worth more dead than I'm alive. And when I say this to Millie, she gets very irritated. I said, but sometimes, sometimes I tell her, it's probably the only way to sort out all these financial problems would be now if I just die, and then you can pay off everything. Uh, that's that's not the right way, of course, but it is important to kind of understand and accept that death is coming every single moment. We are walking towards it. There's no point in being scared about it. It's probably better to be prepared about it. I would be happier to embrace my own death than to embrace the death of a loved one, because that's probably more difficult. I would be quite interested in knowing what happens afterwards, actually. So, but we still haven't come to the technology that you can go and come back.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And thank you for sharing that, because a lot of us don't talk about it, like I said. And to me, I think about it a lot. I talk about it a lot to my loved ones as well. And it's okay to accept, because that's prepares you, like you said. So you kind of have an umbrella and say it's a rainy day today when the sun is not shining. What do you do? So these are all tools, right, to cope when
Absolutely.
either you're left behind or you leave someone behind. But I also believe that once I have talked about it, it's over. There is no need to keep talking about it, because, like you said, we don't want to manifest. We have to be careful what we say to ourselves or what we put out, right? Because
Hmm.
universe has its own way of good and bad. So I'm careful how much I talk about it and how I talk about it. You know, what I also liked in your book is how talented you are. You are not only a poet, you're a writer now, a medical profession, but you also paint. You're an artist. You follow cricket, and there are so many aspects to. And you actually showcased to me and demonstrated to me how a person, because doctors, sorry, I'm just going to change the context.
Hmm.
Doctors in our mind are only doctors. We see them
Yeah.
as these people who, tell you medical things and they don't have a life really. But
Hmm.
you show through your book that there are so many multiple aspects to a person. and a doctor. So how do you manage to manage those all those passions? And do you still right now, like for instance, do you paint? I know you write quite a bit.
Yeah, actually, my painting, I have resurrected my paintings after this had happened, because I think I used to paint quite a bit as a child, and my paintings were quite widely appreciated. I used to get my first earnings were by drawing portraits of people and stuff. I also remember drawing pictures of girls from behind, sitting in the back benches in the college. So that I used to be known for that, and they would ask, "So who did you draw today?" And then they would like to try and find out who that girl is, sort of things. So yes, but in the with medicine and with the career and everything, that things kind of fell by the way for a bit. Um, but now I'm in a way glad that this has almost given me an opportunity to try and start those things again. So I'm painting now. So my paintings are at the moment, most of my paintings are on the walls of my restaurant, the Samsara, and it's a focal point of talking for the customers when they come in. They talk about the paintings, and then they realize that I have done them. So it's a very nice feeling when people say about that. I think it's very important to keep your mind busy, and as a human being, we have got a lot of potential in our brain, and we probably use only less than half of it. If you listen to the yogis and stuff, they say that there are people who can do 10 things at a time. There are people who can do 8 things at a time, sort of thing. I've always tried to tell my daughters that everybody can do one thing at a time. You should be able to do at least two if you want to move ahead in life. That's what I've tried to do. And I think being able to do these other hobbies or co-curricular activities, like I mean, I do painting, I do photography, I try and write whatever I can, and in poems. So I have been blessed with this creativity. Whether I'm able to do justice to that, I'm not sure yet. But I think everybody has got some sort of creativity in them, and it is a question of exploring it further and finding it.
Sure. Bhaskar, lovely, lovely to talk to you. I'm just going to ask you one last question before we wind up. This is
Sure.
the book. Thank you for sending me a copy. I love the book. And so is it available on Amazon and worldwide?
It is available on Amazon. It's on worldwide, and it's on all the formats, which is the Kindle version, the paperback, and the hardcover. It is available on amazon.co.uk, on amazon.com, Amazon India, everywhere. The audiobook is coming by early May. So it's been recorded and remixed at this moment. Um, and yeah, I would feel very honored if people read the book, and if I am able to touch their heart and I can make a difference to their lives. So far, all the ratings that I've got, I think there are about 30 ratings on Amazon, which has all been 5-star ratings. I've also been receiving lots of personal messages on Facebook from people that I don't know, but how I have touched their heart, how the book has made a difference, how my story from my social posts have been making a difference. So it's been a great journey so far,
And
and thank you so
may,
much. There are people like you. I don't have money to promote my book in a paid way, but just like another miracle, people like you and so many others have come up to help me out in spreading this message. So thank you very much.
no, I think it's not help, it's support. And, we support each other. That's how we, live our lives. But this is the book, The Second Chance. Audience, please, and there's behind Bhaskar's head as well, you can see the book, The Second Chance, available on Amazon, any version, Kindle or paperback. Please remember to leave a review once you've read it. Bhaskar, what I really liked about the book, I mean, there are many aspects of the book, but what I really enjoyed, I told you I don't have time, right, to read it because one, of course, of my busy life, and I have a lot of pending books for other writers as well, which I haven't finished. But this book is so simple to read, and I didn't actually understand the medical world, or like I said, we look at doctors like they're not human, they are doctors. It's a
Yeah.
completely different space we give doctors, and you gave me this was a real human space, and that is why it touched me so much. Your journey touched me, the way you supported others, your parents, and the way your family supported you, the way you talk about your children, the nuggets in it, the beautiful inspirational messages without them being messages. They are just your journey that you've shared. The aspects where you talked about cricket, your hostel life, your hardship that you faced, all the adversities, you put it into this little book and this little box. And I know it is not as big as what you've actually been through, but we are so glad. I'm personally so glad that you
Thank
shared
you.
those words with us, that story with us, because I'm very certain this is going to help many, many of us to fight our battles, with love. So thank you very much for being here today. Any last words you want to say for today?
I would just want to say that we we cannot control what life throws at us, but we can control what how we react to them, and we can turn within our reaction, we can turn things from bad to good. Pain is a physical thing, but how we suffer depends on our reaction. We can either be that eagle or that mouse. And I think we all suffer, we all have a story, we all have our battles to fight. Everyone is different. There's always someone worse off, so there's no point in pitting yourself as the worst one. And I think it's upon us on how we deal with these adversities and create an opportunity out of them. That's what I've tried to do. I have to suffer, but it's easier to suffer with a smile. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you for leaving those nuggets for us. And we've had some audience reaction. We've had Smaya Khandelwal, who has said life's a happy illusion and death stark reality. I so agree. And she has been quite, encouraging here. And I wish you absolutely the best always. We will see you on the 26th at the Nehru
Yes,
Center
please.
at your book launch. And those who are in London who want to attend, please do attend. Nehru Center in Mayfair on the 26th. There's 6th onwards, right? 6:30
At
onwards.
6:30 onwards, yeah.
And thank
I
you,
would
audience. Please, please.
I would like to welcome everyone, whoever can attend for the book launch. So please do join, and I hope you like reading the book. And thank you, Raga. Thank you for this opportunity. Very
Thank you,
grateful.
Bhaskar. And audience, please feel free to share this video with those who you think will gain from this. And not just the book, but from the words of wisdom by Dr. Bhaskar Bora. And Nicola, thank you very much in the background. I know that you're doing a lot for us in spite of your own disabilities and difficulties. And thank you, audience, for watching The Views Room. Please do reach out to us as usual on theviewsroom@gmail.com. I'm totally out now on Insta, Facebook, and Twitter at totally out now. And giving you all lots of love. And Dr.
Thank you.
Bhaskar Bora, see you soon.
Thank you.